Ron Howard is still troubled by something that Harrison Ford and Paul Le Mat did to him in 1973, and that was only the beginning. They confined him in a trailer and tossed bottles at his car. For 50 years, Howard remained silent about the negative aspects of Hollywood, a practice they dubbed Opie shaming. He's now informing everyone about everything, including the cases that cost him millions of dollars, the family secrets that nearly ended his marriage, and the set mishaps that nearly killed actors. The most well-liked director in the U.S. finally opens up about his difficult journey. On March 1, 1954, Ron Howard was born in Duncan, Oklahoma. Both his mother, Jean, and father, Rance, put in a lot of effort to succeed as an actor and writer. They had very little money. It was actually really difficult. However, they packed up everything they possessed and relocated to Hollywood in 1958, when Ron was just 4 years old. Their objective was to secure greater acting roles for themselves and each other. It was risky. They offered nothing. After a while, they settled into a modest Burbank home and struggled to support their red-haired son. The fact that they resided close to a large studio was strange. Almost every day as a child, Ron saw Hollywood stars, cameras, and film sets. He didn't go to a typical preschool. Rather, he gained knowledge on film sets, where he observed everything and gradually blended in, despite the fact that no one had intended it. Their entire future changed when they moved to California, not simply where they resided. On January 1, 1956, at the age of 18 months, Ron appeared in the film Frontier Woman. It wasn't intended. Ron was picked because for a brief scene his father needed a baby. A baby crawling over a set was the start of something really significant. His father had lately departed the Air Force, and his parents were still struggling financially. By July 15, 1956, Ron had even appeared in a theater production. His parents, however, did not want him to be treated like other child stars, despite the fact that he was receiving more attention. No long-term contracts would be signed until he was 5 years old. Their finances were nearly ruined by that decision. In 1957, they were so impoverished that Rance considered quitting acting and going to Oklahoma to work as a farmer. But since they believed it was the appropriate thing to do for their son, they clung to it for dear life. From the beginning, Ron's parents made it very clear that he couldn't pursue acting full-time until he was at least 5 years old. Despite their inability to pay the rent, they were forced to decline lucrative offers in 1957 and 1958. They had to pawn things to make ends meet. By the end of 1958, they seriously considered leaving Hollywood, but ultimately decided against it. When Ron turned 5 in 1959, things started to gradually alter. That year, he was cast in the film The Journey. When his name appeared for the first time in the credits, it wasn't all positive. His red hair and freckles were ridiculed by everyone on the scene. He was referred to as a freckle-faced freak. It was hurtful to him. His father got into a battle with a crew member while he was working on the scene. He nearly lost his job. Even though the job only paid $2,500, they were really invested in it. Clint, his younger brother, was born on April 20th of the same year. Getting money was still difficult. Even though they owing roughly $5,000 today, Ron's parents were committed to protecting him. He continued attending public school. They allowed him to be a child as much as possible as the stress increased. Then, in 1960, significant events started to take place. On The Andy Griffith Show, Ron was chosen to play Opie Taylor. He had just turned 6. It was difficult to cast and took a long time. Among the almost 300 children who tried out, Ron stood out due to his innate charm. The first episode aired on October 3, 1960, and it quickly became popular. Of the 249 shows, Ron appeared in 243. Initially, he was paid $300 per show. He was earning $1,000 for each episode by the time the show ended in 1968. However, success caused them a great deal of worry. He had to remember his lines, be punctual, and perform exceptionally well despite his youth. Every scene and joke had to be delivered precisely at the appropriate moment because there were no actual people there. It wasn't simple, but he picked things up quickly. In the play, time seemed to stop, and Ron's character gave everyone a sense of security and warmth. People liked him because of this, but he was maturing rapidly behind the scenes. Ron grew close to Andy Griffith, the star of the show. Andy was not merely a co-star. He resembled an instructor. He would discuss the scenarios and tell Ron stories in between takes. Their bond grew stronger over time, beginning when Ron was just 6 years old. However, silence was not maintained all the time. Ron occasionally witnessed Andy getting into arguments on work because he struggled to abstain from alcohol. It was horrible. When Andy read aloud a negative review, he became enraged in front of everyone. Despite all, he remained kind to Ron, supporting him at tough scenes and looking after him. Many years later, in 1997, Andy even saw Ron in a Queen set film. Only after Andy passed away in 2012 did they discover they were connected, but not biologically. Their enduring relationship was strengthened by the surprise and joy of the announcement. In 1962, Ron was 8 years old when he nearly drowned in a scene on a lake. Something went wrong while filming a fishing scene on a small boat. The boat capsized and Ron fell into the sea. Andy Griffith immediately got in when he saw it happen. They hauled Ron out. The creators of the show remained silent since they didn't want anyone to know because it might damage the show's reputation. However, Ron never forgot it. There were no safety regulations in place back then. Children put in long hours at work, and mishaps were frequent. Ron was changed by the moment he nearly drowned. When he eventually began filming, he ensured that every set had safety protocols. Ron was 14 years old at the conclusion of the Andy Griffith Show in 1968. However, he was rejected and did not receive any additional parts. More than 50 tests failed between 1968 and 1969. Everyone still referred to him as Opie. He was stuck, he thought. He announced his intention to resign to his parents. He used to earn a lot more money than he did in 1969, when he played minor roles like Gentle Ben for just $500 per episode. In 1970, he lost the lead in The Wild Country. Over time, things deteriorated. After living with the Smiths in 1971, he earned $8,000 from 39 performances. However, the show did not perform well. He was nervous about all of these rejections, but he kept it to himself. He averaged 12 points per game while playing basketball in high school. In 1972, he made an effort to lead a typical adolescent life, but he felt trapped inside. In 1973, things changed again. When Ron was cast in American Graffiti, he was 19 years old. It was to be made by George Lucas. They started filming in California in June. Although everything appeared enjoyable on the surface, things were difficult behind the scenes. Paul Le Mat and Harrison Ford, his co-stars, made fun of him. They shouted, "Dance, Opie, dance!" and tossed beer bottles at his car on July 15th, before locking him in a trailer on July 20th to prevent him from attending practices. To make his drinks taste terrible, they even added something to them. It was all because they didn't like that he had been a youngster star. Ron remained silent. He overcame everything and won $10,000, and he later claimed that it was the only occasion when he felt like Opie shaming. Years later, Ford apologized. But he was hurt. In 1970, while both Ron and Cheryl Alley were in high school, they met. They went on their first date on November 1st. By December, Cheryl's pregnancy was widely known. They were only 16. The gossip got out fast. In January 1971, Ron stated in the school newspaper that it was untrue. It was covered by tabloids in February. As a result, he lost a $2,000 TV guest spot. They remained together despite Cheryl's heartbreak. 3 times Ron offered. Finally, in October 1974, she said yes. June 7th, 1975 was their wedding date. They've spent 50 years together. Ron frequently refers to her as his fortunate charm. After Andy Griffith, getting money remained difficult. In January 1971, Ron started carrying newspapers. He earned $150 a month and submitted $200 worth of papers each morning before school. To go out with Cheryl, he had to pay in cash. However, on April 5th, 1971, a truck struck him from behind as he was traveling to an audition. His next work had to be postponed since he injured himself. The expenditures for the medical care came to $3,000. His health insurance was non-existent. He received $200 for his bike as well. For years, he suffered from agony, which affected his movements in subsequent films. Even after American Graffiti became a great hit in 1973, Ron didn't receive the recognition he deserved, despite the fact that it only cost $777,000. Approximately the US, the film brought approximately $115 million, but Ron only received $10,000. Not a dime of the earnings. He requested 1% or over $1 million from George Lucas. "Don't," Lucas said. Their friendship deteriorated. In order to have a reliable source of income in 1974, Ron had to accept a position on Happy Days, paying $1,000 per episode. He became a director as a result of the show's positive impact on his firm. In January 1974, Ron Howard made his television debut as Richie Cunningham on the new series Happy Days. He was just 19 years old at the time. On January 15th, the first broadcast aired before an audience of 11 million. First of all, the show focused primarily on Richie's adolescent years in 1950s Milwaukee. But in 1976, things started to shift. Henry Winkler is well known for his portrayal of Fonzie. Then the ratings suddenly skyrocketed. With 31 million viewers each week, it swiftly rose to the top of the ratings. That same year, ABC's executives devised a new strategy. They planned to rename the show Fonzie's Happy Days in order to capitalize on Fonzie's increasing popularity. In 1976 alone, Fonzie-branded merchandise brought in over $1 million, but it didn't sit well with Ron Howard. He was being shunted to the side, even though he had been the star from the beginning. In November 1976, he offered the makers an option. If they changed the title, he would resign. Even though his contract didn't expire until 1980, he was prepared to quit. Nearly everything failed. However, supporters were furious when Variety magazine learned of the news on December 5th. ABC received more than 10,000 letters. No one wanted the heart of the show to be lost. ABC gave up. Howard remained, and the previous title was retained. However, something had changed. By 1977, the show was earning $50 million annually. Nevertheless, Winkler was earning $75,000 per show, while Howard was only earning $25,000. According to Howard's 1980 interview, this marked a sea change. It caused him to consider becoming a director more. The set was not a quiet place either. When the show was at its peak, in 1976 and 1977, the gang started arguing about money and screen time. Anson Williams, who received $12,000 each show, played Potsy. Ron Howard's earnings were only half that. He was jealous and furious. On November 16, 1976, Williams is reported to have bounded off the set of an episode titled The Muckrakers. Gary Marshall, the show's creator, altered a scene to improve Howard's appearance. There were many who felt it was unjust. Although a fight was reported, it was never confirmed. ABC made an effort to conceal it in order to safeguard their $50 million computer. After all these years, the situation worsened even further in 2012. For $10 million in unpaid credits, Williams and a few other cast members filed a lawsuit against CBS. They claimed that their fair part of the merchandise was not given to them. In 1976 alone, over 5 million Happy Days lunchboxes were purchased. It ended on April 4, 2012. Each received only $65,000. Williams claimed that although the companies made $100,000 a year, he never did. Although Howard was not a party to the case, he stated in a 2025 interview that such incidents nearly caused friendships to fall apart. In early 1975, while working on Happy Days, Howard secretly produced his first short film. Over a 2-week break in March, he barely spent $2,000 creating a single 10-minute film called Deed of Daring Do. Henry Winkler even made an appearance. On June 15, 1975, it was initially shown at a small gathering. He was alleged to have been accused of copying, although this was never confirmed. At the time, copyright regulations were unclear. In 1976, fan fiction writers were required to pay up to $5,000 to resolve a case that had nothing to do with Howard. On April 20, 1975, producer Roger Corman was shocked when he requested reshoots. It cost him an additional $500, nearly breaking his budget. The film then won a minor prize at the Atlanta Film Festival on September 10th. This modest endeavor served as his inspiration for directing Grand Theft Auto in 1977. The film barely cost $600,000, but it made $15 million. On June 7, 1975, Howard wed Cheryl Alley, his high school sweetheart. In Burbank, getting married only costs $800. Henry Winkler was the best man among the around 300 guests. Cheryl's father covered the costs. Making $25,000 per show was not as important to Howard as having a simple wedding. They began their honeymoon in Hawaii on June 8, 1975, and stayed there for 2 peaceful weeks. Although there isn't any concrete evidence, there are allegations that tabloids started publishing articles about adultery in 1977 after leaking private images. Later in 1978, the bad news got worse. False rumors that someone was cheating were circulated by the National Enquirer as of October 15th. According to Howard, it damaged his reputation. In a 2025 interview, he stated that the kissing chair they received on their 50th wedding anniversary brought back memories of their early years of love. Ron Howard accomplished something courageous in July 1980. He left Happy Days. The show continued to draw 20 million viewers each week, but Howard wanted more. He requested permission from ABC to produce TV films. Instead, they granted him $100,000 for an additional 3 years. "No," he responded. On July 20th, 1980, he agreed to a $1 million contract with NBC. With that new contract, he was free to pursue his artistic goals. On September 9th, 1980, just before the 8th season premiered, he left Happy Days. Fans were taken aback. He received almost 15,000 letters pleading with him to return by August. Howard later compared ABC's treatment of him to an eagle robbing a newborn. His first major project after leaving was Night Shift. Despite earning $21 million when it debuted in 1982, the show was never the same. Richie's absence caused a 30% decline in ratings. It continued to air with 255 episodes till 1984. At the age of 23, Howard created Grand Theft Auto in 1977. In addition, he co-wrote it with his father, Rance, and played the lead part. Unexpectedly, it made $15 million when it was released on June 16th. However, an automobile stunt that was being filmed went terribly wrong. Stuntman Paul Bartel suffered severe injuries. He fractured bones and injured himself internally. As a director, Howard feared his career would finish before it had begun. He quietly closed the case in 1978. He gave the accident a lot of thinking. He made safety the top priority in subsequent projects. Splash, directed by Howard, was released on March 9, 1984. It cost $11 million to make and brought in $69 million. $8 million. It helped make Tom Hanks famous. However, behind the scenes, things became chaotic. The majority of Hanks's outbursts occurred when the plot was altered. On July 15, 1983, Hanks got into a confrontation with the crew when they were filming in New York. A fight had to be broken up by Howard. The film nearly failed due to studios, but it was salvaged by Disney's new Touchstone moniker. When Cocoon was filming in Florida in 1985, an irate extra called Harold Jenkins threatened to kill Howard. Jenkins, who had been fired, threatened violence in emails on February 12th. He believed the film mocked the elderly. For round-the-clock protection, Fox had to spend $150,000. The film won't be released until June 21st, and the plot was toned down. Nevertheless, the film earned $85 million and won Oscars for its visual effects and Donna Meche. The release date of Willow was May 20th, 1988. In 1972, George Lucas came up with the concept, and Howard spent $35 million on the film. It brought in $137. Despite having 6 million customers globally, they still lost $20 million as a result of excessive marketing and poor ratings. Howard and Lucas were always at odds. They clashed about $5 million in cuts in June 1987. Howard nearly gave up. Home footage eventually helped level it out. On August 2, 1989, Howard's Parenthood was released. It started when his 4-year-old daughter vomited up sushi on him during a flight during a whirlwind trip to Australia. Although it cost $20 million to film, it brought in $126 million. In May 1989, author Elena Vasquez filed a lawsuit against Howard, claiming that he had stolen her story. He reached a settlement of $500,000 in June. The case nearly prevented the release of the film. In 1991, Howard directed the firefighter story Backdraft. There was a problem on July 23, 1990. Kurt Russell's face and hand were injured as a massive fire broke out. After investigating the claims, OSHA discovered serious safety issues. 3 other members of the group were injured as well. They had no idea when the fire would return and strike again, Howard later stated. Nevertheless, the film earned $152 million and received a visual effects Oscar nomination. The release date of Odyssey 13 was June 30, 1995. It was challenging to shoot, yet it brought in $355 million worldwide. Even down to precise NASA records, Tom Hanks demanded accuracy. He pressed for revisions to the writing on October 12, 1994. On October 15th, the entire $2 million procedure had to end. Howard promised to resign on October 18th. NASA employees had to intervene and provide support. The film took home the 1996 Oscars for both editing and music.